I was 28 when she said it, her voice low and sharp, like a blade wrapped in silk. Young girls these days probably don't know how to keep a man. She leaned across the table, her eyes catching the dim light of the bar, daring me to disagree. I should have laughed it off, let the words dissolve into the clink of glasses and the hum of strangers around us. But something in her tone, something in the way her lips curled, like she was sharing a secret she didn't want me to understand, made my chest tighten, like a knot I couldn't untie. I looked at her, Evelyn, my best friend's mother, a woman who'd known me since I was a kid, since I was just Nate's awkward friend with braces and too long hair. And I said, "That's love." The words slipped out before I could stop them, raw and unfiltered, like they'd been waiting there all along. Her smile froze, just for a second, and I thought I'd ruined everything. I wasn't supposed to say that. I wasn't supposed to feel the heat creeping up my neck, or notice the way her fingers lingered on the stem of her wine glass, tracing slow circles that seemed to pull me in. I wasn't supposed to wonder what she meant by keep a man, or why her words felt like they were meant for me. But I did. And in that moment I knew I was stepping into something I couldn't walk back from. Something forbidden. Something that would haunt me for years, like a song stuck in my head, playing on repeat. Have you ever said something you didn't mean to, but the second it left your lips, you realized it was the truest thing you'd ever spoken? That's what it felt like, sitting there, her gaze pinning me to the spot, like a spotlight I couldn't escape. I was too young to know better, too old to pretend I didn't understand. She was 47, elegant, untouchable, the kind of woman who carried her pain like perfume, subtle, but everywhere, lingering in the air between us. And I was the idiot who thought I could challenge her with 2 words, as if they could hold all the weight of what I was feeling. Her eyes narrowed, just a fraction, and I could feel the weight of her silence, heavy and thick, like the air before a storm. It wasn't anger, not exactly. It was something deeper, something that made my pulse race and my throat tighten. I wanted to look away, to break the spell, to pretend I hadn't just said something that changed everything. But I couldn't. Her gaze held me there, like a moth caught in a flame's glow, knowing it's dangerous but unable to turn back. I could see the faintest twitch at the corner of her mouth, like she was deciding whether to smile or shut me down. And I waited, holding my breath, wondering if I'd just lit a match in a room full of gasoline. What would you have done? Would you have stayed quiet, swallowed the truth, let the moment pass like it never happened? Or would you have let it spill out, knowing it might burn everything down? It started innocently enough. Or at least, that's what I told myself, what I kept repeating in my head to make it feel less like a betrayal. My best friend, Nate, had been my anchor since high school, the kind of friend who knows you better than you know yourself. His family was my family, dinners at their house, holidays where we'd all cram into their living room, late-night talks in their kitchen over coffee that always went cold because we'd get lost in stories about nothing and everything. His mom, Evelyn, was always there, always watching, always a little too sharp for the room. She wasn't like other moms. She didn't fuss over us with snacks or hover with questions about homework. She listened, her eyes narrowing like she could see through your skin to the thoughts you weren't saying, like she knew the parts of you that you tried to hide. I was 16 when I first noticed it, the way she'd hold my gaze a second too long when I'd ramble about school or girls or the dumb things teenage boys think matter. Back then, I thought it was just her being intense, like she was studying me, trying to figure out what made me tick. I'd blush, stammer, look away, chalking it up to her being Nate's intimidating mom. By 28, I knew better. I knew it wasn't just intensity. It was something else, something I didn't have a name for but felt every time she looked at me, like a current running under my skin. That night, Nate was out of town, some work trip he'd been complaining about for weeks, grumbling about early flights and boring conferences. I'd stopped by their house to drop off a book he'd lent me, some dog-eared thriller he swore I'd love but I hadn't even cracked open. I didn't expect her to answer the door. I didn't expect the way my stomach flipped when she did, her hair loose, falling in soft waves over her shoulders, a glass of red wine already in her hand, her lips curving into a smile that felt like it was just for me. "Come in," she said, her voice warm, like it was the most natural thing in the world. Stay for a drink. I should have said no. I had no reason to be there, no excuse for the way my pulse quickened when she stepped aside to let me in, her bare feet silent on the hardwood floor. But I followed her, into the soft glow of her living room, where the air smelled faintly of lavender and regret, where the silence felt like it was holding its breath. We didn't stay at the house long. I need to get out of here, she said, her voice heavy with something I couldn't place. Loneliness, maybe, or something deeper, something that made my skin prickle with curiosity. She suggested a bar down the street, a quiet place with low lights and leather booths, the kind of spot where the world feels small and secrets feel safe. I don't know why I agreed. Maybe it was the way she looked at me, like she needed me to say yes. Maybe it was the way my heart pounded at the thought of being alone with her, just the two of us, no Nate, no expectations, no rules. We sat in a corner booth, tucked away from the hum of the bar, and she talked about Nate, about how proud she was of him, about her divorce years ago, about how life had a way of slipping through your fingers like sand, no matter how tightly you tried to hold on. I listened, nodding, trying not to stare at the way her necklace rested against her collarbone, the way it caught the light every time she moved, glinting like a warning I didn't want to heed. Trying not to wonder what it would feel like to brush it aside, to feel the warmth of her skin under my fingers, to know what it would be like to be closer than I had any right to be. She was different that night. Not the Evelyn I'd known for years, the one who'd tease Nate and me about our messy hair or sneak us extra dessert when his dad wasn't looking. This Evelyn was raw, unguarded, like she'd let the mask she usually wore slip just enough for me to see the cracks beneath. She talked about her marriage, how it had been a slow unraveling, thread by thread, until there was nothing left to hold together. She talked about the years she'd spent trying to be the perfect wife, the perfect mother, the perfect version of herself, only to realize no one was keeping score, no one was watching. You think you're doing it right, she said, her voice soft but bitter, like she was tasting the words for the first time. But then you wake up one day and realize you've been living for someone else, and you don't even know who you are anymore. I didn't know what to say, so I just nodded, my throat tight with the weight of her words, with the way they seemed to echo something I'd never admitted to myself. Then she said it. That line about young girls. It wasn't casual, not some throwaway comment meant to fill the silence. It was a challenge, a test, her eyes locking onto mine like she was waiting to see if I'd flinch, if I'd back down, if I'd pretend I didn't feel the undercurrent of something dangerous between us. I didn't flinch. I said, "That's love." And the air between us changed, like a door had been cracked open, letting in a draft I couldn't ignore. It wasn't just a conversation anymore. It was a tightrope, and I was already losing my balance, my feet slipping with every second I stayed. I should have left then. I should have paid the tab, made an excuse, walked away before I said something else I couldn't take back. But I didn't. I stayed, and every second I stayed, I felt the weight of her words, her presence, her everything. She was Nate's mom. She was 19 years older than me. She was untouchable. And yet there I was, wondering what it would be like to touch her, to cross a line I knew I'd never come back from, to let myself want what I'd spent years pretending I didn't. The bar grew quieter as the night wore on, the crowd thinning until it was just us and the faint hum of jazz from the speakers overhead, a slow, mournful melody that seemed to wrap around us like a cocoon. Evelyn didn't say anything for a long time after my comment. She just sipped her wine, her eyes tracing the edge of the glass like she was reading something in the reflection, something only she could see. I wanted to take it back, to laugh and say I was joking, to pretend I hadn't just laid myself bare with two simple words. But the words stuck in my throat, heavy and unyielding, and my heart was pounding so hard I was sure she could hear it. I hated myself for it. This wasn't supposed to happen. Not with her. Not with the woman who'd bandaged my knee when I fell off my bike at 12, who'd laughed at my terrible jokes, who'd always been just out of reach, a figure I admired but never dared to think about like this. Not until now. "You think love is enough?" she finally said, her voice so soft I almost missed it, like a whisper meant for someone else. There was no mockery in it, no judgment, just a question, raw and unguarded, like she was peeling back a layer of herself and letting me see something no one else got to see. I didn't know how to answer. I didn't know if I was supposed to. All I knew was that the space between us felt smaller, too small, like the air was running out, like we were standing on the edge of something we couldn't come back from. I could feel her presence like a physical thing, the warmth of her arms so close to mine, the faint scent of her perfume mixing with the wine, pulling me in even as my mind screamed at me to pull back. I don't know, I said, my voice rougher than I meant it to be, like I'd been running and couldn't catch my breath. Maybe it's not about keeping someone. Maybe it's about wanting them. The words felt dangerous, like I was admitting something I'd been trying to hide even from myself, something I'd buried deep but could no longer ignore. Her lips parted, just for a second, and I saw something flicker in her eyes, surprise, maybe, or something darker, something that made my stomach twist with a mix of fear and longing. She leaned forward, her elbow brushing the table, her fingers so close to mine I could feel the warmth of her skin, like a current running between us. Wanting is dangerous, she said, her voice barely above a whisper, so soft it felt like a secret. It makes you forget what you should do. I should have stopped there. I should have nodded, changed the subject, anything to pull us back from the edge we were teetering on. But I didn't. What do you want, Evelyn? I asked, and the question felt like a match struck in the dark, bright and dangerous, lighting up everything I'd been trying to ignore. Her breath caught, just for a moment, and I knew I'd crossed a line. But I didn't care. Not then. I wanted to know. I needed to know. Because the way she was looking at me, the way her eyes held mine, it felt like she was asking herself the same question, like she was standing on the same precipice, wondering whether to jump. She didn't answer right away. Instead, she leaned back, her fingers curling around her glass, her eyes never leaving mine. You're too young to ask questions like that, she said, but there was no conviction in it, no real rebuke. It was a deflection, a way to keep the distance between us, to keep the walls up. But the distance was gone. I could feel it in the way my skin prickled, in the way her gaze lingered on my mouth before flicking back up to my eyes, in the way my heart pounded so hard I thought it might break through my chest. I could feel it in the silence that followed, heavy and charged, like we were both waiting for the other to make a move, to say something, to do something that would either save us or ruin us. The rest of the night was a blur of half-spoken truths and silences that said too much. We talked about nothing, movies we'd seen, old memories of Nate and me getting into trouble as kids, the way the rain had started to speckle the bar's windows. But every word felt heavy, charged, like we were circling something we couldn't name, something we were too afraid to touch. I noticed everything, the way her laugh softened when she looked at me, like it was a sound she didn't mean to let out, the way her hand brushed mine when she reached for her drink, a fleeting touch that sent a jolt through me, the way she didn't pull away when it happened, letting her fingers linger just a second too long. Each moment was a step deeper into something I knew I shouldn't want, but I couldn't stop myself. I didn't want to stop myself. I wanted to stay in that booth forever, in that moment where the world was just the two of us, where the rules didn't matter, where I could pretend that wanting her wasn't wrong. But it was wrong. I kept thinking about Nate. My best friend. The guy who'd trusted me with everything, who'd been there through every breakup, every bad decision, every moment I thought I couldn't get through. The guy who'd invited me into his home, his family, his life, without a second thought. What would he think if he saw us now, sitting too close, talking too quietly, our words laced with something neither of us was brave enough to name? Would he laugh it off, call me an idiot for reading too much into a late-night conversation with his mom? Or would he hate me, see it as a betrayal, a line crossed that could never be uncrossed? I didn't know. All I knew was that every time Evelyn spoke, every time her eyes met mine, I felt like I was betraying him. And yet I couldn't leave. I couldn't stop the pull, the need to know what she was thinking, what she was feeling, what she meant when she said things like, "Wanting is dangerous." I couldn't stop myself from wanting to know her, not as Nate's mom, not as the woman who'd been a fixture in my life for years, but as Evelyn, the woman sitting across from me, her eyes full of secrets and sadness and something I couldn't name but felt in every fiber of my being. "Do you ever feel like you're living someone else's life?" she asked at one point, her voice so quiet I had to lean in to hear her, my face inches from hers, close enough to see the faint lines around her eyes, the ones she didn't try to hide. "Like you're playing a role, but it's not yours?" I nodded, even though I wasn't sure I understood, not completely. I just wanted her to keep talking, to keep letting me in, to keep sharing these pieces of herself that felt like secrets no one else got to hear. "Sometimes," she said, her eyes distant, like she was seeing something far away, "I wonder what it would be like to just stop pretending." Her words hung there, heavy and fragile, like glass about to shatter, and I felt them settle into me like a weight I didn't know how to carry. I wanted to ask her what she meant, who she was pretending to be, what it would look like if she stopped. But I didn't. I just sat there, my heart pounding, my mind racing, trying to hold on to the moment without breaking it. I didn't know what she meant, not really, but I felt it. The longing in her voice, the fear, the quiet desperation of someone who'd spent too long holding herself together for everyone else, who'd forgotten what it felt like to want something for herself. And I wondered if she was talking about herself, or me, or us. The thought made my stomach twist, because I knew, deep down, I knew, that there was no us. There couldn't be. She was Nate's mom. She was 19 years older than me. She was untouchable. And yet I wanted to touch her. I wanted to know what it would feel like to close the distance between us, to feel her breath against my skin, to hear her say my name in a way that wasn't just polite, wasn't just friendly, wasn't just safe. I wanted to know what it would be like to let go, to give in, to be reckless for once in my life. The night stretched on, and the tension grew heavier, thicker, until it felt like the air itself was holding its breath, waiting for one of us to break. I kept waiting for her to pull back, to laugh and say we'd had too much wine, to remind me of all the reasons this was wrong, to put the walls back up and push me away. But she didn't. She just kept looking at me, her eyes searching mine, like she was trying to decide something, like she was weighing the cost of whatever came next. And I was too weak to walk away. Too weak to do the right thing. Too weak to stop myself from wanting her, from wanting to know what it would be like to be the one she didn't push away. We left the bar around midnight, the air outside cool and sharp against my skin, a stark contrast to the warmth of the booth we'd been hiding in. I walked her back to her house, even though I knew I shouldn't, even though every step felt like a choice I wasn't ready to make but was making anyway. She didn't say much, just walked beside me, her shoulder brushing mine every few steps, sending a jolt through me each time, like a spark I couldn't ignore. I kept my hands in my pockets, afraid of what they'd do if I let them free, afraid of what I'd do if I let myself feel everything I was feeling. The street was quiet, the only sound the soft crunch of our footsteps and the distant hum of a city that felt a million miles away. I wanted to say something, anything, to fill the silence, but every word I could think of felt too big, too dangerous, like it would tip us over the edge we'd been dancing on all night. When we reached her porch, she stopped, turning to face me under the glow of the street light. Her eyes caught the light, making them glow, and for a moment, I forgot how to breathe, forgot how to think, forgot everything except the way she was looking at me. "You didn't have to walk me home," she said, her voice soft, almost teasing, but there was something else there, something that made my chest ache, something that made me want to stay forever. "I wanted to," I said, and it was the truth, too much truth, the kind of truth that felt like it could unravel everything. Her lips curved, just slightly, and she looked away, like she was trying to hide something, like she was afraid of what I'd see if she let me look too long. "You're a good kid," she said, and the word kid stung more than it should have, like a slap I hadn't seen coming. I wasn't a kid. Not anymore. And she knew it. I could see it in the way her eyes flicked back to mine, in the way her breath hitched, just for a second, like she was fighting the same battle I was. I should have left then. I should have said goodnight, turned around, gone home, put this night behind me like it was just a moment, just a mistake. But I didn't. I stood there, my heart pounding, my mind racing with all the things I shouldn't say, shouldn't feel, shouldn't want. Evelyn, I said, my voice barely above a whisper, so quiet I wasn't sure she'd hear it. What are we doing? The question hung in the air, heavy and dangerous, like a storm cloud ready to break. I saw her flinch, just for a moment, her hand tightening on the doorknob, her back to me. For a second, I thought she wouldn't answer, that she'd let the silence swallow us both. Then she turned slowly, and the look in her eyes was something I'd never seen before, raw, unguarded, almost afraid, like she was seeing me for the first time. I don't know, she said, and it was the most honest thing she'd ever said to me, the kind of honesty that cuts deeper than any lie. But I don't want you to go. Those words hit me like a punch, knocking the air out of me, leaving me dizzy and unsteady. I felt them in my chest, in my throat, in the way my hands shook in my pockets, desperate to reach for her but too afraid to move. I wanted to step closer, to touch her, to pull her into me and forget everything else. Nate, the age difference, the consequences, the world that said this was wrong. I wanted to know what it would feel like to hold her, to feel her heartbeat against mine, to let go of all the reasons I shouldn't. But I didn't. I just stood there, caught between wanting and knowing better, my whole body screaming with the effort of staying still, of not giving in to the pull that had been building all night. Do you ever think about it? I asked, my voice cracking, barely holding together. What it would be like? I didn't need to explain. She knew what I meant, knew I was asking about the thing we'd been circling all night, the thing we were too afraid to name. Her eyes darkened, and for a moment I thought she might say yes. I thought she might step closer, close the gap, let the world fall away and let us be something other than what we were. I thought she might let me see the part of her she kept hidden, the part that was tired of pretending, tired of playing the role she'd been assigned for so long. But she didn't. She just looked at me, her expression unreadable, and said, "You should go." It wasn't what I wanted to hear. It wasn't what I expected. But it was enough to snap me out of whatever spell I was under, enough to remind me of the lines I couldn't cross, the consequences I couldn't ignore. I nodded, my throat tight, my chest heavy with something I couldn't name, and turned to leave. I made it halfway down the street, the cool night air biting at my skin, before I heard her voice again, soft and distant, barely reaching me through the darkness. "I think about it," she said, and when I turned back, she was already closing the door, the soft click of it echoing in my ears like a gunshot. That moment haunted me for weeks. Months. Years. I couldn't stop replaying it, turning it over in my mind like a puzzle I'd never solve, a riddle with no answer. What would have happened if I'd stayed? If I'd pushed, if I'd crossed that line, if I'd let myself be reckless for once in my life? Would it have been a mistake, a fleeting moment of madness that would have destroyed everything? Or would it have been the one moment where I was honest about what I wanted, where I let myself feel something real, no matter how wrong it was? I saw her again, of course, Nate's birthday, a family dinner, a random Sunday at their house, but it was never the same. She was careful, distant, like she was trying to rebuild the walls I'd almost torn down, like she was afraid of what would happen if she let them fall again. And I let her. Because I was afraid too. Afraid of what I felt, afraid of what it would do to Nate, to me, to her. Afraid of what it would mean to admit that I wanted something I could never have, something that would have changed everything. But the feeling never went away. It lived in me, quiet and heavy, like a secret I couldn't confess, a weight I carried in my chest every day. I'd catch her looking at me sometimes, her eyes lingering just a second too long, and I'd wonder if she felt it too. The pull. The longing. The guilt. I'd wonder if she lay awake at night, like I did, thinking about what we could have been if the world wasn't what it was, if we weren't who we were, if we'd been brave enough, or foolish enough, to let ourselves want what we wanted. I'd wonder if she ever replayed that night in her mind, the way I did, every word, every glance, every silence, searching for the moment where we could have changed everything. Years later, I still think about that night. The way her voice broke when she said, "I don't want you to go." Like it was a confession she hadn't meant to make. The way her eyes held mine, like she was begging me to stay and run at the same time, torn between what she wanted and what she knew was right. I didn't cross that line. I didn't let myself. But sometimes I wonder if I should have. If one moment of reckless, forbidden truth would have been worth the wreckage it left behind, worth the guilt, the pain, the fallout. I saw Evelyn last month, at Nate's wedding, standing across the room in a dress that caught the light like she was made of it. She was still beautiful, still untouchable, her smile a little sadder than I remembered, like she was carrying the same weight I was. We didn't talk about that night. We didn't need to. It was there, in the space between us, in the way she looked at me when no one else was watching, her eyes soft and heavy with something unspoken. A quiet ache, a question neither of us would ever answer. Love isn't about keeping someone. It's about wanting them, even when you know you shouldn't, even when it hurts, even when it's wrong. It's about carrying that want with you, letting it live in the quiet corners of your heart, even when you know it can never be anything more. And maybe that's why it stays with you, long after the moment's gone, like a shadow you can't shake, a memory that feels more real than the life you're living. Have you ever wanted something you knew you couldn't have? Something that would have changed everything, if you'd been brave enough, or foolish enough, to reach for it? Tell me in the comments. And if this story hit you, hit that subscribe button. Because sometimes, the things we don't say, the things we don't do, are the ones that keep us up at night, whispering what could have been.